Hello, Culture Matters podcast. I am so excited for today. Before I introduce you to our guest, here I'm out of breath. That'll be good. Here's a quote just for this episode. Education without values, education without values, as useful as it is, seems rather to make man more man a more clever devil. Our guest today lives their values. They are a freaking culture man. They are more than just a founder of a company. They're a founder of a family, a culture, the founder of the Power for Helping People podcast, the Power of Helping People podcast. Man, I've gone on quite a few walks with them over the years and come away a better person. Every time I see them, they have something of to give, not just something meaningful like that they have thought about, but in how they show up, the questions they ask, the things they share. And man, I'm so happy to have, with founder of BSI and all of that, but a freaking amazing human being, Ryan Austin, on the show today. And I'm out
Man,
of breath because I was so nervous and excited. I had to go like grab my energy drinks. Now this guy's chopping down a tree outside. I'm like, oh my God.
this is
Good to see
uh
you.
this is something that's really cool, man. I just ever since I met you, I felt drawn, I felt encouraged, I felt led to really just be a part of your life, not only, you know, personally, but business too. And what I mean by that is like, we're doing life together, and I think that that's really cool about this is like, when you have that person that you can just, count on to see every 6 months or every 3 months, it's really important to me, it's almost like when we see each other, it's like we never stopped. It's like when you have a friend and you see him, every day, you don't really talk about, all the ins and outs, but when you see him after 3 or 6 months, it's like, man, you have so much to talk about. You have so much, exciting news. And, I just, you and Jenna just have been a huge inspiration and a huge part to me and my self growth, because I'm telling you right now, if I didn't have you guys in my life, and I know it's ins and outs every once in a while, but I'm telling you, I look up to you, Jay. I truly do, and I think this is not me just beating a drum for you. It's like you're one of the most interesting, charismatic, culture-driven person, and I admire that. And I really mean that because I'm trying to do that in my own company. So when I see you do those things, it blows me away. And it literally it's a different tactic to culture. And I think when you do that, you're going to be successful no matter what. And what you're doing is you're being successful, but you're making others successful too around you, and you don't even know it. So I appreciate that.
And thank you all for listening. And we will see you next time on the Culture Matters podcast. Man, I love you. I have to accept it. I thank you. And I thanks for the support because I can't do this alone. I need to grow.
Yeah.
And I do have a question of so I don't consider myself a great listener. I definitely didn't listen until I started this show. How have you begun to master that? Because I've watched you listening.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm gonna anything I tell you guys today is obviously in my perspective. And the reason why I say that is because there's some things that, I see and do, and I put it into my perspective. So, when I was first, starting back about 5.5 years ago with TCS, which is Top Contractor School, I came in just not knowing a lot, but I thought I knew a lot. And that was ego driven. I felt like I had something to say, and I really, really didn't know what to say because, I grew up without a dad around all the time. So I was always seeking approval. So I felt like I had to speak in order to be heard. And what I was taught by several people including yourself and Jenna, is like sometimes it's better to listen. And I watched how engaged. I remember the first time I met you. I'll never forget it. We sat down and talked for almost 40, it was probably 45 to an hour long in one conversation. And you did something that really just intrigued me to make me learn. Is you came up to me and you crossed your arms like this and you went like this. And I don't know if you notice you do that, but when you do that and you jump in, I feel like you were engaged, you were listening and you listened. And when I had that conversation, I talked a lot. But meanwhile, I wasn't learning anything because I was talking. And so
Hmm.
what I found myself doing is really just taking a step back and actually saying like, I don't know what I don't know. So I got to start learning a little bit more and stop thinking that I know everything. And so that was one of those things that I had to get out of my own way. And to be honest with you, I had to look at myself in the mirror. And I had a lot of people in my life, and I'm gonna tell you this is like I had a lot of people in my life say, "Man, Ryan, you're a powerful person, but sometimes you just need to stop talking and just listen and be there for that person because you're really good at different things, but when you're talking you're not able to share those things with that people." And I thought about that. And in the past, I'm going to tell you this, in the past I would have said, you know what, my ego would have been one of those people that like, no, that guy doesn't know what he's talking about. But in a life that I was going down, being alcohol free and everything like that, I really just didn't have that cloud on me. So I actually intook it probably one of the first times. And it wasn't just one person, it was multiple people. And believe it or not, your newly wife Jenna was like, you have a lot to say, Ryan, and people need to shut up and listen sometimes. And but here's the thing though, I wasn't elo putting anything eloquently because ultimately when you say things, it's got to really mean a lot. You can do all those fillers and everything and think that you have to do that. But I learned very, very early on in TCS that sometimes I just need to shut up and listen. And I found myself really dissecting the conversation, which meanwhile I'm learning. And then, there's a lot of stories that I could tell you, but when I just shut up, man, it's powerful what can transform when you just listen and watch people. And you know, I think Ed Milet says it best is like you're the person that you used to be. What is it? That if you're the person that you're used to be, are you most eager or easily to be able to teach? I think that's something like that. I don't know. You probably know the quote better than I do, but it's I was a person that was seeking
Oh,
attention.
the person you used to be is the
Yeah.
most easy to
Yep.
teach. Wow,
Yep. So
wow.
my thing was like I was really just I was trying to be that person for everybody, which meanwhile, for me, I was actually doing a disservice, because people just needed to hear. People needed to listen. Like I told my wife this many times. I asked my kids, "Do you want me to listen or do you want me to give you advice?" And a lot of the times I was just giving advice. So I started asking my kids, do you want me to give you advice or do you want me to listen? Because ultimately I always had an answer for everything. And when you have an answer for everything, that's not a good thing because nobody has the answers to everything. And so I started listening a lot more and I actually saw more people actually like drawn to me. More people wanted to hear what I had to say. But before they kind of just said, yeah, that guy knows whatever. He knows everything. I don't want to talk to him. So I started noticing that. And believe it or not, I was actually sad about it because, you know, I seeked so many different things in my life and I was empty. And to be honest with you, I love people. And so I really just had to stop doing what I was doing. And I've noticed a lot of different things in my life growth, my spiritual growth, my way of learning. I read a lot more. I learned that from you. I mean, I'm telling you, a lot of these things, as you get older and you start doing these things, you get more wiser, and you start looking at things differently. You start seeking people that are doing the same things. And I just watched people and I watched successful people do things and I mimicked them. I
Hmm.
said, you know what? I want to do this, I want to do that, but I'm never going to be able to get there if I do this. And so I started reading. And just to be clear, is I was never a reader. 10 years ago, I didn't even really know how to read. I didn't comprehend. In fact, when I started reading 6 years ago, I actually had to teach myself to comprehend and learn by doing audio and reading at the same time, and then getting the words down, because ultimately, if you're not used to doing it, what's going to happen is you're just going to read it just to read it, and then it goes in your brain and goes out. So I was having a hard time with comprehending. So wonder why I didn't listen, because I didn't know how. So I was listening to the audio, I was reading, and I was just putting myself in that situation. It's like, man, I got to get smarter. I'm not smart enough to be able to listen. So I didn't know how to articulate listening. So believe it or not, people don't know what they don't know. So meanwhile, I wanted to listen, but I didn't know how to listen. So then I started reading books and listening to audio. And when you do that, you're actually having to comprehend and listen and intake it, because you're watching the words go. So it intakes. And it's crazy how that worked in my life. And then several months later, I get this invitation to, this thing called Grow Your Business for God's Sakes. And I was at a point in my life that, I had to share my story. And so I went there and I shared my story with a guy named Anthony Hart. And Anthony Hart's a pastor out of Virginia Beach. And something clicked when I met him. Something clicked and said, man, the person you are, Ryan, I can see a big heart in you. You just got to go out and be you. And I took that in, and I'm like, wow, that's true. Because I was trying to be somebody I wasn't for many, many years. Because what I was doing is I was seeking approval, because I didn't ever get the approval. So if I go back a little bit, and I'll talk a little bit about this because we can go really deep, is like when I was 15, like I had to fend for myself. I had my mom get remarried to my stepdad, and it was at a point in my life where it was like he already raised his kids. I don't fault him for that. He raised his kids. He came to our house and said, "You know what? I'm not going to be your father. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do this." And I felt like I felt betrayed again. I felt seeking, like I was trying to seek guidance again. I was trying to make approval to not only, my mom, but I was trying to seek approval from my stepdad, because ultimately there's another person in my life that's going away, that's leaving me. So I ended up taking a huge step and moving out at 15 years old. And so I don't ever recommend doing that if you don't have to, because it was a very hard life. At 15, I moved out, moved into my grandma's house till I was 16. And then when I was 16, what I had to do was is I had to go get a house. I had to get something. Well, when you're 16 years old and you're living on your own, it's tough, man. It's really tough. It's so tough that you don't know where your next meal's coming. I say this because we are all childs of God, and we all have been hurt in one time in our life. And when I say this, is like this was so difficult because you and I have a lot in common, man. We're seeking approval. We always are looking for that approval. And to be honest with you, I had to tell myself I had to seek approval from myself first. And that was the hardest point in my life. Because when I was 15, 16 and I moved out, I had to work. I had to do sports. I had to drive to school as a 16-year-old. I had to pay for my own lunches. I had to pay for my food. I had to pay for my rent, light, electricity. I don't want anybody ever to have to go through that, because it's the toughest thing you'll ever have to go through. And when I had to go through that, not only was I growing as a human being, I was getting stronger and stronger. But the thing is I didn't dial in my internal self. I didn't know who I was, because I wasn't able to grow into a person that I was supposed to be, because I grew up so fast. And this is going deep, because the thing is like I had all the friends. Everybody was always like, wow, look at this guy. He's doing this, he's doing that, he's making money, he's living on his own. Everybody was jealous of me. But meanwhile, everybody had something that I didn't have. Everybody had somebody that was there for them 24/7 if they needed somebody to talk to. Now, don't get me wrong, I had my grandfather. He was a big inspiration in my life. He literally did everything for me. He came to my sports. He made sure if I didn't have money, he'd help me. In fact, he's the person that bought me my first house, my condo. I lived in a low income housing. It was a co-op that I had to pay for, and it was basically paying for rent in a house that I owned, but I had to pay for this thing. So I really just, I was very grateful for it. When I did that in my life, I knew that if I got through that, I could get through anything in my life. Ultimately, I found myself down this road of alcohol. I found myself down this trying to be the person that I wasn't. So in 2017, November 17th, I made the decision to tell myself I'm never going to have a drink of alcohol ever again. And what you don't realize what happened next is I actually found myself because I wasn't masking it in all the things that most people mask. And I want people to hear this because there's a lot of following that listens to you is like, if you pretend like you're somebody that you're not, it's a very lonely road. Add alcohol to that. That is a detriment of disaster. And so I consider that my rock bottom, which for most they're like, yeah, right, dude, that wasn't rock bottom. But if you had to endure everything that I had to go through in my life, what would rock bottom be? Like I could have kept going and kept going and kept going and lost my wife, lost my kids, ultimately lose everything that I had, my business, my employees, everything. I could have literally overnight could have lost everything. But I chose to make that moment. And you can either choose to say one day I'll be this, or you can choose to say one day is today. And you can start that one day today. And so, like a lot of people that are watching this and listening, it's like, don't ask yourself if I'm all right, because nobody's ever all right. Ask yourself, am I being the best version of myself? Am I being my true inner self? And the best thing about that is I found that because my God, I mean, my father upstairs, because ultimately it doesn't matter if you have a father, your real true father is, the man upstairs. And when I got into my faith the last, 6 years and the last 3 years and the last 2 years have been really, really intense, is like, I just gave it to God. Like, if you want to take everything, take it. Take it. I don't care. I don't need it. I'm not money driven. I've never been in my life. You know why? Because I never had any. So when you don't have money, it doesn't matter. It doesn't mean much to you. What a lot of people don't realize is they get the scarcity mentality with money because when they get it, they don't want to lose it. So then it becomes a detriment to who they are. It becomes a grip on them. I always say, I was generous back then. I'm generous now.
Mm.
I don't care because ultimately money doesn't buy anything. Money buys things. Doesn't buy happiness. And I had grandparents that really were there for me. And I'm not saying anything bad about my mom. I love my mom to death. She was there. She's a single mother. She worked 7 days a week through my childhood. She had to do what she had to do. So I praise her for that. But ultimately, when you're a grown adult at 6, 7 years old, taking care of your brother that's 2 years younger than you every single day, that grows you up pretty quick. That makes you a person that you don't know who you are because you never got to experience the person that you should have been. So, like, for that, you have to make sure you don't grow up too fast. You don't do those things. I mean, my wife says it all the time, you're too hard on your kids. Well, am I? Maybe. But I want them to learn what it truly is to be themselves. And that's why I push them to be them, not me, to push them to be them, the best version of their self. And then, we can go into culture about that. Is like, that's the biggest thing about culture, is making people around you notice the strengths that they have and empowering them to be that person. And it's infectious. That's culture.
Hmm.
Making sure that people are loved and they know who they really are. That's culture. Because I didn't have that culture growing up. That culture is huge. What you do in your culture matters. Culture does matter. Culture matters because every person has their own culture within them.
Hmm.
They don't have culture when they're acting like somebody else. They don't act, like I love it when I watch people grow and they get a taste of money. And I love to watch what they do with their culture. Do they choose to use it for themselves, or do they get more generous, more loving, more empowered to help? You told me a story, and I won't go into the details, but you told me a story that really impacted me. You're a part of an organization. You're making money now. You want to do so much for that organization. The way you talked about that organization is what culture is. That's what people can do to win at culture. And I didn't realize that till I really started knowing who I truly was. Because when I found out who I truly was as a person, I can see the gifts that everybody has because I'm open, I'm listening, my eyes are open, you know, and that's why I look at you all the time and I say, man, I follow you dude, I follow you and Jenna like all the time. And I look at everything and I see it. And you know what? Is if something's out of line of who you really are, I'm going to say something to you because that's what culture is about.
How do you do it? How do you help how do we say something?
This is easy. I actually was just thinking about this the other day. And so I'm glad you asked that question. When people need the truth, sometimes it hurts. But if you do it out of love, compassion, it's amazing what people will actually hear. I literally care a lot about my people. People that follow me, they know who I really am because I put my life out there, good, bad, indifferent. I'm not perfect, guys. I don't proclaim to be perfect. In fact, today was a tough day. I didn't even know if I was going to be on here because today was a tough day. And so the tough day is I had to let somebody go in my company that I cared about. But the thing is culture matters. When somebody's not filling up to their full potential and they're doing something that's without the culture and they're doing it without love, sometimes you can't carry those people up the mountain. You can do everything you possibly can, but if that person's not meant to be, that person's not meant to be. And that's what I really started to understand is like, regardless of what that person thinks, regardless of what that person does, if you be true to yourself and you do it and you be that person that you're supposed to be, that person's going to listen. If they don't listen, then it's not the person that you want to climb up the mountain with. And it's tough, man. I've really had a lot of hard conversations the last 6 months. And to be honest with you, if you stay true to who you are, no matter what you do in life, God's got your back. Because ultimately he wants you to be the best version of yourself, regardless, regardless of what people think. And that's been the toughest thing for me. I mean, I just stepped out in my faith about 3 years ago. Can you imagine being that person that's sitting back, worried, running a business, multiple millions of dollars, 8 figures, and you're worried about what people are thinking? You're worried about the next move that you make because you're feeling like you're going to be judged. When you can get out of that judgment factor and not care what people think, like I do right now, because the only person I have to care about is God. Because ultimately, he's the number one person that will never judge you. So if as long as I have that, I don't have to worry about anything. And yes, I have lost a lot of friends. I've lost a lot of friends in my life. That it's detriment. It's sad. But God's got a plan. Because if I can just impact one person every single day, I'm doing what I was made to be. And to be honest with you, I'm nobody. But with God's hand, I'm somebody.
Mm.
And that's the key in this world, is to be yourself. And you said you didn't say it, but I can sense it in your body. It's tough to tell people the truth.
Yes.
It's tough to tell your dad that you want him in your life. It's tough to tell your dad that you wanted him to be a grandfather and him tell you he can't be the one. That's tough. But if you're right with yourself and what's going on in your life, watch what happens, because God's got your back. And that's why culture means so much to me, is because culture's not about a company and how you're doing and how you treat your people. Culture is making a person the best version of themselves, bringing out those talents and making them see it, making them proud of who they are. That's culture, because I didn't have that growing up.
Mm.
That's true family culture,
Mm.
because family will tell people the tough news. And guess what happens? You don't dislove your family because they tell you the truth. You might be mad at them, but you'll never not love them. But if you pretend like everybody is your family, you don't even need to pretend. You are, like, every person that comes in my life is my family, regardless. But I have to tell them the truth. And there's a lot of hard conversations that I have to have in the next 6 months that's going on in my head, that I have to tell people the truth. And it's tough because I'm worried about losing my friends. And I'll be honest with you, that's what's the scariest thing about it. But guess what? If I don't do it, I'm not being my true self,
Mm.
because I can act like I can act somebody else and not do it. But that's not the person I became 3 years ago. Last year I got baptized. And I want to tell this story because it's a really, really cool story. So I went to Nashville, and it was my book signing. It was a year and a half ago. And it was a year from last November. And I wrote a book with 19 other authors called The Joyful Entrepreneur. And it was one of the scariest times in my life because I didn't know how to write. I was nervous. I was not a very good writer, and I knew that it was going to be edited, but I didn't know. And so I wrote this book, and I was praying a lot about getting my story out there, telling my story. Everybody wants to tell their story. Everybody has a story. And I was always told that my story was very impactful. But meanwhile, I didn't think it was impactful. I think my story now is more impactful than it was yesterday. Tomorrow, I'm going to think my story is more impactful than the day before. And the reason why is because as the older I get and the more intentional I am with what I'm doing, becomes wisdom. And when wisdom is in the room, sometimes wisdom is silence. Sometimes wisdom is watching what's going on. Sometimes wisdom is just being there for somebody. We had our meeting in our office today, and I watch and I notice things. And when I got right with myself, I can notice things on everybody else because before I was so engulfed in my ego, which I could say edging got out. I was so worried about myself, I didn't even notice the people around me and what they were doing in my company. So when I got rid of and to be honest with you, you'll never get rid of your ego because your ego is always there. But when I learned how to actually use my ego to its strength is when things started changing in my life. I always tell people, I give people, I always tell people, I challenge people to come to my office. In fact, I'll give you the address, 2651 Metamore Road, Oxford, Michigan, 48371. I challenge everybody to walk in my office and not tell me that it's different. You walk in my office, there's an infectious love throughout everybody. And the reason why I say that is because culture starts with love. And what does the Bible always talk about? Love, hope, joy. When you can bring that in your company, that's when you've mastered culture. Now, I'm not a master at culture. I'm working every day. I had to get rid of somebody today, like I said. It really is tough. But I love that guy. And I'll always love him. And who knows? He might be here someday when he decides to be the best version of himself. But I owe it to every single one of my teammates. I owe them the best that they can be. Because if they can't be the best, I'm holding back the culture that's within this company. So many people lose track of culture as they grow because it's all about the money. You want to know what true culture is? Give all your money away and see if you still have it. Because I've been broke, I've been rich, I've been broke, and I've been rich again. I know that my culture will never change based on a dollar amount because when I had the money, I didn't care about the money. All I cared about is giving people what they wanted. The problem is I didn't know who was what because I wasn't taking time to make sure the culture was proper. So I was having people that would take from me. I was having people that would manipulate me. I was having things that I didn't even realize was going on, stealing. But when I changed the culture and found out who I really was, that's when everything changed. People ran. People ran away from it that were scared, and people that love it came closer. So this year, in fact, so much that we almost had 75 interviews, which everybody always says, man, we're hurting for employees. We're hurting from employees. Dude, this has been the easiest year that I've ever had with employees. This has been the easiest year to get the best employees I've ever gotten. This year has been a blessing from the man upstairs because we're running the play. I literally say that term all the time. We're running the play because we put a playbook together to win. And that's a culture driven family that we're going to do. And we're going to win. So I just wanted to share that with you because, culture does matter to me, man. And I just love watching and listening and seeing how I can fix things. I mean, there's so many stories I could tell you, but Well, why don't we go on to the next question? Because I know you probably got several questions.
What are the values of the company?
So we have a lot of values, but my biggest value and one of the biggest values that I have is integrity. Doing things when others aren't watching. Because ultimately, God's watching. He guides me where I'm going. So no matter what you do it without integrity. We have we have a saying here that, you know, we don't come with problems, we come with solutions. And when you're solution driven and you're a servant leader within my company, now you're becoming the best version of yourself because you're putting others before yourself. So that's a huge thing with us. Stop worrying about yourself and pour into others and watch what happens. And
Mm.
that's what I started doing 3 years ago is I literally started running the play and starting to say, you know what? It's not about me, Ryan. Get rid of your ego. Start helping others. Start pouring into others around you. Start loving people. Start taking time to meet people for coffee and ask them questions about their life. Ask them about their family, what they're struggling with. Ask them what makes them tick. Because when you can draw that relationship with every one of your employees, now you can get the best version out of them. And it's not a manipulation tool. It's a tool that you need to be successful if your culture is good. Because ultimately, you can, if I can't see anything in people and I think they're complacent, not saying they're going to stay here, but I'm going to push them as far as I can. And in fact, so much that one of my guys started here a long time ago. And I just told him, I said, man, in 3 years, you're going to have a lot of resentment for me if you don't do something about it. And I told him, I said, but you know what? I see so much more in you. And he goes, Ryan, I really appreciate that. He's like, because I've never been told that before.
Huh.
That is very powerful. You know what that guy did? He went and got a CDL. You know what he did next? He went from $12 an hour to now he's making 20 something dollars an hour. And he did it. And he's making his family better. He's still got problems. He's still got issues. But guess what, man? That sucker is going. And I never, ever thought he could do what he did. But all I had to do is show him love because he never had love in his life. That's tough, man. This world is such a dark place. We talk about it a lot, man. It's like, you know, my childhood, I'm not saying it's the worst because dude, mine's not even close to the worst. I've seen stories and I've talked to people that have been locked in rooms. I've seen people that have been chained up so their parents can go somewhere and they come back. Like I've witnessed and talked to people that has had this happen. So for me to be able to play sports and have my grandfather take me to sports and my mom to put a roof over our head because she had to work, dude, they're heroes. But you have to put in the work. I thought I was on the easy street. I worked hard as a young kid. I did all this stuff and I put on cruise control. I told myself, that's not the best version of yourself. The best version of yourself is somebody that's going to go out there and pour into others and do what your powers are. I call them my superpowers. Go out and say one word to somebody that could change their life. That is powerful.
Mm.
When somebody comes to work and they have a bad day, go give them a hug. Tell you a story that I don't tell much about, but I've said it twice. So there's this kid, young boy, 4 years old. He struggled. He'd go to school, go in the corner, play by himself. Next day, go do the same thing. The next day, go to the other corner, do the same thing, always by himself. Teacher noticed it. Teacher was like, I'm going to go check this out. Teacher walks over, notices the kid playing by himself. There's 15 kids over here, 7 kids over here. The one boy is by himself. Teacher notices it. Teacher walks over there and says, what's going on, buddy? Oh, nothing. Nothing much. Teacher goes, can I give you a hug? Sure. Goes in for the hug. Boy wants to move away. It's like 5 seconds into the hug. He wants to move away. He's anxious. He's tired of being close to somebody. 15 seconds. He's trying to squirm out, drop down. Teacher keeps grabbing on, keeps holding. 30 seconds. Now the kid's about to literally push her away. The teacher grabs on even harder, holds harder. 45 seconds. The kid, he's like, you know what? I'm going to lose. I might as well just give in. The kid just lets go, relieves, lets his guard down. Minute hits. The boy is melting in that teacher's arm. When you hit a minute, when you hug somebody, your hearts communicate. And when those hearts can communicate, is what real life's about. The love between two individuals that don't even know each other like that, because your hearts are communicating. And that's what I feel God does. He communicates through those things, through your heart. So when you love somebody and you pour into people and you're there for people, that's what culture is. That's what love is. That gives people joy, happiness, and hope. So people can portray culture to be, you take care of your people, you do this, is a buzzword. Everything's a buzzword. That's why people can tell if there is culture in companies, because if people love their employees, they love their people. That's what culture is about. That's why so many people call bullshit on culture, because the person doesn't love people. I don't think you can ever have a good culture if there's not love and joy and hope in a company.
I agree. What is that then?
What is a company without joy, love, and happiness?
Yeah.
Or I would say hell. I would say a Groundhog's Day of hell. Because who wants to wake up every single day and be somebody they're not and not love people? I always ask people when they come to work for me, they sit across this chair and I sit them and I look them in the eye and I say, do you have kids? How much do you love them? You will find out if somebody has love in them on how they respond to that question. Because if I notice something that changes or deters or a snide comment or anything, I know that person's not able or capable of having a good culture within our company. Because the foundation of our company is built on family, love, happiness, joy, hope. Because we can all be somebody that we're not, but it's so rewarding when you can be the person that you were made to be. And to be honest with you, I see a lot in that in you. I see that you're trying to help others. Meanwhile, there might be something inside of you that still needs to be worked on so you can be that true person, just like I do. I'm not perfect. You know what's going to separate us from everybody else is making sure we wake up every single day and say, you know what, I'm going to be the best version of myself, no matter who or what anybody says about me. And if you say that every single day, that's when we become really, really good. And it's hard to even say that is like for me is like I've come so far in the last 3 years that it's like it's almost impossible. If I look back and I think about it, it's like, how the heck did this happen? I found myself. And when you can stop being somebody you're not, it's a lot easier. It's not hard. Acting like somebody you're not is the hardest job in the world. It's almost so much that I feel like that's a lot of mental health issues because they're trying to be somebody they're not, and it drives them insane, and they don't even know what to do because they don't even know who they are. They become this person that they didn't even realize who they were. And what is that? That's a lonely life. That's mental health. That's why I feel like comedians have issues, mental health. You know why? Because they're always trying to be somebody they're not. I love that BSI hat on you, dude.
Well, and, why did I wear it? Because everything that you're saying, you do. So, of course, I wanted to wear the hat today.
Yeah. Hey, man, it stands for Birmingham Seal Coat Incorporated, but I just say it says bring smiles in, because ultimately we're just trying to bring people in, bring smiles in, man. That's it. It's crazy. It's a crazy day and age when every day I show up for work and I love what I do and I love seeing the people I do. We had an orientation a week ago on it was on Wednesday last week. And I'm gonna paint the picture. We had it at a event center. We walked in and there was a sign that says welcome BSI family. And we walk around and you get all your packets and you get all your stuff and it really just it was such a breathtaking moment because it was like all the hard work that everybody put in was here. It was ready. We were starting the season. It's like the home opener. But you know what I thought about the whole time? It's like I watched and I just scanned the room and I said, you know what this feeling feels like? It feels like the first day of high school in school. And you come back and you see all your buddies. And everybody is hugging and smiling and laughing and giggling and telling stories and can't wait to see everybody. That is what it felt like in orientation.
Wow.
The year before that, it was all right. The year before that, I don't even remember it. But I'll tell you right now, I'll remember Wednesday last week for the rest of my life. Because each day at BSI gets better and better. Each day, people get better and better. Each day, people love to be here. That's culture. That is culture.
Why did you start it?
Why did I start culture? Or why did I start changing?
The company. No, the company.
Well, I started the
Can you hear
company.
me?
I started the company in 2004 with my brother because I was working in a really tough job inside, stressful, making money, but not seeing the true roots of what I wanted to do in my life. My high school coach, I actually ran into him yesterday and got a selfie with him because he was walking down the road and He was a really inspiration in my life. And he always said, Ryan, he's like, you're like a lawyer. You're always trying to figure out an easier way to do things. And I said, yeah. And he goes, well, he's like, you'll never be able to work for anybody. And that's what he told me in high school. And I said, oh, okay. Well, when I worked with people, I poured into things. I did the things. But the problem is the culture wasn't the same. The people weren't the same. They didn't treat me the way I wanted to be treated. Remember when I told you about culture, about treating my employees and loving them and stuff? That's what I was seeking. I was seeking approval from everybody I talked to. Every person that came into my life, all I did was want them to like me. That's all I wanted. The problem is when you work in a company and you're a number, people don't love you. People don't care about you. So I said, you know what? I'm going to start a company and I'm going to do it with my brother because my brother was doing construction at the time, and that was in the pivotal time of the major downslide in 2004. My brother's like, well, I'm laid off 3 or 4 months out of the year. He's like, yeah, let's do it. So I started this company because I knew there was something bigger and better for my brother and I out there to make an impact. And we did make an impact for a long time. I mean, we hired people. I mean, I still to this day get people that worked with us back in 2004, 2005, 2006, 2008, still come up to me to this day and say, Ryan, Mark, you were an influence in my life because you made us and you showed us what true work is. In fact, there's people that I've had to get rid of. They've come later on in their life and saying, Ryan, if you wouldn't have said what you had to say when I was walking out the door, I wouldn't be where I am today. Thank you. You asked me a question earlier is how do you say that? If you're true with people, true, you tell the truth. What'll happen is that person might be mad at the time, but eventually that person grows up and knows that that person in your life changed the directory of who you were or who you became.
Hmm.
And I can honestly say this. There's not a lot of people that will ever talk bad about me. And the reason why is because everything I say, I do 100%. I've never once said something and not done it because I will die trying. In fact, so much that I took an undertaking last October. I trained for a full marathon. Probably a bad move by my part. Not a runner, not wanting to even do it. But you know what I said is like, you know what? Let's just try it. So I told one person, and the one person told me, there's no way you're not made for running. And I said, oh, really? Okay. Went to another person, said, hey, I'm going to run a marathon. That person said, there's no way you're going to finish the marathon. Okay, I got you. Thanks. Go to the next person. I'm running a marathon. I was so confident after that. After the first two people said I wasn't going to make it, that person, I said, I'm going to run this marathon. And that person says, well, if you do it, I'll do it with you.
Wow.
And so Jeremy and I in my company, you met Jeremy. Jeremy and I trained for 19 weeks. In fact, so much that I only ran a 5K before and it almost killed me the first time I ran it. And then I ran it a couple more times, but I'm not a fast speed runner by any means. So my thing was just take one foot in front of the next. Well, I trained for 19 weeks and I got, right before we started the race, my controller was going to run it with us too. And because she's ran marathons in the past, she was running a half marathon. She runs half marathons, and she told her husband, she's like, "Oh, I'm going to run with Ryan and Jeremy at BSI for the marathon." And he's like, "No, you're not. You're going to run the second half of the marathon. You're going to run the last 13.1 miles." And I didn't think of anything at the time, but if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have finished this race. And the reason why is because she told me to keep running. She told me to she was screaming at me, "You're not stopping. You're going to keep going." That last 4 miles was the hardest 4 miles of my life. But I'll tell you something right now. I didn't quit. I went to a whole nother level in my head. that it was an out of body experience that I literally 1 foot in front of the next, 1 foot in front of the next, 1 foot in front of the next. I crossed that finish line and I've never been so satisfied because I did what I said I was going to do. And to be honest with you, not a lot of people in my life can actually say that they do what they say because I've had people come in and out of my life. It's the infamous saying, like, you know, you find out who your true friends are when you need them the most.
Mm.
That's the key, is being that person in people's life every single time that they need you. There's a saying that always a lot of people say, and it says, you know, like, who loses if I don't win? I think of that all the time.
Wow.
Everybody around me loses if I don't do what I'm supposed to do because they can't be the best version of themselves. Because right now, I'm being the best version of myself by doing what I'm doing.
What do you say to the disengaged CEO?
Easy come, easy go. I'll tell you that right now. I'm seeing a lot of it around me. When CEOs become that person, it's dangerous. And I will let you know right now, I'm so glad I had my grandfather in my life because he taught me a lot about that. You have to put others first. And the CEOs that do what you just said, they don't care about anybody but themselves. They're on a mission and they'll do whatever it takes and burn everything down before.
How do we stop that shit in our culture?
Tell the truth, regardless of what it does to your life, regardless if you lose everything, regardless if you're not part of the group, regardless if you become that person that's lonely again. You know, I said I was very lonely when I was younger. Don't worry about the kid in the corner because God's got a plan. He's got a plan. He wants you to be the best version of yourself. So the kid in the corner might be lonely for a little longer, but more will come.
Hmm. I wrote this down. A disengaged leader in an organization creates cancer.
Yeah. It's worse than cancer. You can live with cancer. You can beat cancer. You can't beat that. People need to be broke down and built back up.
Mm.
There's so many disengaged CEOs and leaders in this world. I don't, in my perspective, I don't claim to be the person that knows a lot, but I'll tell you right now, there's a lot of God in me right now. And I listen every morning. I wake up really early and I'm in the moment. In fact, I have a now alarm on my phone that rings 3 times a day that I stop and I do whatever I'm doing and I pray.
Wow.
I pray for others. I pray for guidance for others. I pray for wisdom. I pray for openness on conversations. When I learned to listen, it changed my life. People can say all they want, that they listen, they take advice, they understand. What did I tell you? When you say something and you don't do it, you're a poor leader.
Hmm.
A lot of people say a lot of things in the limelight, but if they don't do it, that's a culture crumbler. So when you could ask any one of my employees, all 50 something of them, you could ask every single one of them and ask them if Ryan's ever not did what he said. And they all say, hell no, dude, that guy's the craziest person I know. If he tells you he's going to do something, he's going to do it. That's a true leader. When you bring everybody on the ship, you better have a you better have a good route and a compass, because what's going to happen is it's going to sink, and you're going to hit roughy waters, and you're going to hit storms, and it's going to capsize.
I want to add something to that thought.
Yeah.
A disengaged leader in an organization undermines trust. We need trust to talk about the problems and not each other. Because everything's personal.
Mm-hmm.
Because right. I
Yeah.
have ownership. I'm proud, but at the same time, there are things that are going to go wrong that are beyond us that we need to talk about.
Yeah.
So when the leader is disengaged, it undermines the trust that makes talking about the problems easier. When there's no trust, we just attack each other.
Yeah.
Like, and I don't believe there's no like formula to get rid of the leader. You need the leader. You need the
Yeah.
leader. Everybody's, I'm so, uh, the books, a lot of the things out there, they're convincing us not to lead under the guise that we'll be better leaders. But a lot of it is convincing us not to lead, like to feel shame around work. Like, I'm not a good business owner because I have to be there. That's the craziest thing I've ever heard.
When
Like,
when
I'm
people
called
take
to be there.
Yeah, 100%. When people
That's a lie,
Yeah, 100%.
half truth.
Yeah. When people take their eye off the prize, and that prize could be anything. That prize could be your culture, that prize could be love, that prize could be family. When people take their eye off that, the disengagement starts immediately. When you become this mundane Groundhog's Day that constantly is the same thing over and over, God is using that to break you down. Because ultimately he's really just trying to, like, God puts us through a lot of things. He puts us through trials, he puts us through tribulations, but it all is all he's doing is he's trying to make us stronger for the next point in our life. So when we shy away from that and we disengage ourselves with that, what happens is God stops doing things for you and through you. But when you lean in and abide by him, how crazy is that? It's almost like a ripple effect that he floods you with joy and happiness. Like when people are around me, they ask me what's different about me. They ask me, and I always tell them, I literally said, God doesn't speak to you, but the Holy Spirit's all around me. He's telling me a lot of things. And right now he's telling me this and he's telling me that. And people look at me and like they freak out. They're like, I was just reading about that today. I was just reading about this. Did you even know about that? I'm like, listen, I'm called to say what I'm supposed to say. There's so many times when I've been on podcasts, and there's so many times that I've got up on stage, and in fact, you got to witness one when I won the culture award. I don't even remember what I said. You know why I don't remember what I said? Because I didn't say things for me. I said it for him. The Holy Spirit spoke through me that day. And you know why? Because I was shocked I won it. Because I wasn't doing that for the award. I was running the play that I was supposed to run. A lot of people, a lot of leaders, They hear stuff, they intake stuff, but they never put it to work. Because why? Because it's hard.
Yes.
It's really hard. So what we do in this world, and that's why so many people make so much money. It's like, well, I don't have the solutions. I can go to this conference and I can go to this person, I can go to that person and spend all this money and get all this information. And that's going to save my business. That's going to save my business. No, that's not going to save your business. You know what's going to save your business? Being the best version of yourself, working on yourself, blocking out all the noise. It's so crazy on when you're driving down the road and you're worried about everybody around you. It's a dangerous thing because you're not paying attention to the road. But when you're going on a company route and you can actually see everything and you're looking at this company and this company and that company and you're worried about that company, you're focused on the wrong thing. That's what I was doing in the past. I was worried about everybody else, what people were thinking about me, what would think. You know what? When I stopped worrying about things, it was almost like I was reborn again. I've had freedom. And the crazy thing about that is when I ties it all around full circle. A year ago, November, I got baptized. I came out of that water free. I came out of that water, God knowing that you're the best version and you're going to get better and better and better. In fact, so much I choked coming out of the water because I thought I was reborn again. I literally had no idea what I was doing. I woke up from this moment and I'm like, I knew I was going in here, but I feel different. It's crazy when you give your life to the Lord, what happens. And people say, and this is the cliche thing, I see it on social. It's funny because the last 3 years I've been really working hard on this, but now I'm starting to see more stuff on social media, faith and this and that. Listen, you can say all you want on social media. You can say what you want on podcasts. You can say all this. If you don't live a true life, people are going to notice it within 5 minutes. That could be a good thing, a detriment, or whatever, but you're not being your true self. We keep coming back to this. We keep coming back to this culture thing of if you're not your true self, you're never going to be in a good culture.
Well, God, I think social media gives us an opportunity to 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 mislead us to thinking we're doing things we're not.
Mm-hmm.
Because the more we talk about what we're not doing, we trick our brain to think we're doing it. And then people online will tell us how great we are based on not experiencing us in reality, which will then lead us to think that we are actually doing it when we're not. And so it's a lie.
That's why I love you, Jay, because you're speaking my language. You're literally speaking my language right now. It's like people have no idea what they're doing to themselves right now. They are destroying everything around them by doing what they're doing because you can't fake it forever. I started the conversation off with I was being somebody I'm not. It's exhausting. That's why people commit suicide. That's why people have mental health issues. It's not that they're depressed. It's not that they're this or not they're that. And I'm not a doctor, so this is in my perspective. I keep telling you guys this. This is my perspective. I've seen a lot of people kill themselves. You know why? And I know why. Because now that I put things into perspective, now that I'm seeing clearer than I've ever seen, they were just wanted to be loved. They wanted to be the person that they were made to be, but they couldn't do it because they were doing something for so long, they gave up. It's hard, guys. It's so damn hard to do that. I did it for years. I masked myself in drinking to be able to forget those things. Not saying I was a bad person. I was a really good person. I still did that, but I was lying to myself of who I really could be. There's a lot of people in my life, Jay, that are doing this right now. And I have to have some hard decisions in the next several months. And there's probably going to be people that push me away. And it's sad, but I owe it to myself to be the person that I'm supposed to be and say the tough things, have the hard conversations, tell people that it's just not right. But I'm doing this out of love, guys. This isn't something like somebody had to tell me what I was doing wrong. I owe it to the people around me to do the same exact thing. And if it helps, guess what? The power of helping people. If I can just help one person, that's the key.
I, I wrote this down. Our people need to see us in spirit, inspired, in spirit. When I think of in spirit, they need to see us engaged
Mm-hmm.
because, like, that creates inspiration in others.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, that in spirit piece, that's being in congruence with one's word, in congruence with one's thought of their word. And there's no shortcut.
There's no shortcut for anything, man. I've been doing this for 20 years, and I want people to hear this. I've been doing this 20 years and I still don't have it all figured out. So if you think you can get this figured out in 2 to 5 years and make a ton of money and do all this stuff and do it, easy come, easy go. It's hard work. But guess what? It's fun. It's fun because you get to watch people become the true version. I'm going to tell a story right now. I literally have an employee, and I'm not going to say the name, but I have an employee right now that I am so proud of today because of where he came from and where he is now. It's been 14 years, and the guy was a recovering addict. And his life now, I'm not taking credit for this because BSI family did all this. His life is completely changed. He is the true version of himself right now. And I'm bringing it out more and more every day because that is what the power of helping people is. You say, you say that, how do you tell people things gently and how do you tell people? Use the heart trick. Give that person the hug and don't let them go for a minute and then tell them. Because if that person doesn't have that heart communication between you two, they need to find themselves because they have no heart. They've lost it. And then that might be too late. I always have a little prayer that I say a little bit, and it says, Dear Heavenly Father, I ask you to watch over me. I ask you to guide me. I ask you to give me patience when patience wears. I ask the devil to get behind me because I know that I am not perfect. So, devil, get behind me because you have no room for my life. I love you, God. Watch over me, guide me, keep me strength, keep me seeking your wisdom. Use me to go through you. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. And I say this because life is tough, man. Life is tough. Family's tough. Relationships are tough. Do it out of love. Do it out of care, joy, hope. You know what all people want? They want hope. This world could be changed overnight if there was a person out in this world that gave people hope every day. There's so much darkness. And a lot of people and a lot of Americans are losing hope. They say, I'm losing hope. I'm losing this. I'm losing that. Give people hope and it changes the world. But when we're divided, when we're separated, people lose hope. That's why culture matters.
if you're listening to this, challenge you to listen to the Power of Helping People podcast, to follow my dear friend Ryan Austin, and to leave us a review on the Culture Matters podcast. Thanks so much for coming. And we will see you next time on the Culture Matters podcast.